sports.
A new partnership between the Parkersburg Police Department and Wood County Schools is putting officers in elementary buildings a few days each week, focused on safety but also on relationships. Our Cassidy Fury went to Guyon Elementary School to speak with the people who helped bring the program to life.
A new partnership between the Parkersburg Police Department and Wood County Schools is putting officers in elementary schools. District leaders said the goal is simple: visibility, reassurance, and connection. Officers will spend time in hallways, classrooms, and around school activities so students recognize them as familiar faces, not strangers.
There's no enforcement component here. I mean, obviously, if there's a problem, we would handle it, an outside, problem or something like that. But the primary objective is just interaction with the kids.
Students told us having an officer already inside the building makes a difference, especially when they think about worst-case scenarios. And for younger kids, it's also about knowing who to turn to.
Just in case if an intruder comes in, they would already be there.
I think that it helps everybody else feel safer, so if an emergency is there, they know that they're there to keep them safe.
Members of the Wood County Board of Education said the more students see officers in everyday moments, saying hi, answering questions, being a part of the school day, the more comfortable they become.
Our students being able to see and talk to these officers just makes them familiar with them as they are civil servants, and it allows them to just simply be more comfortable with them.
Officer Michael McMullen, who was involved in the program, said that the comfort level can matter long after the school day ends, helping to build trust early.
This program, if it continues, it will allow us to, create a more comfortable environment for the kids. Because oftentimes they see us, some are scared, some don't know what to say. But the more friendly we are to them and more interaction we have at school with them, it creates a more stable relationship.
Not everyone sees the need for expanding the idea more permanently. State Senator Mike Azinger said he understands the goal, but doesn't believe putting officers in every school is necessary right now.
If it gets to a point where that's necessary and it's something that the folks are demanding, we'll certainly address it.
For now, district officials say officers will rotate through elementary schools a few days a week with the focus on presence, prevention, and building relationships. In Wood County, I'm Cassidy Fury with WTAP News.